There is a type of person who never seems to struggle. They get the promotion without the office politics. They close the deal without pressure. They win the argument without raising their voice. They move through conflict, the way water moves through stone, not by force, but by finding the place the stone was already willing to give. And most people watching them think they got lucky. They're naturally charming. Their situation was easier than mine. But what if I told you that 2,500 years ago, a Chinese general wrote down the exact philosophy these people are using, and that almost everyone who has ever read it has missed the deepest point? Because here's what people think the art of war is about. They think it's about aggression, about tactics, about outsmarting enemies in negotiation rooms and corporate boardrooms. They underline the famous lines, all warfare is deception. They put it on their desk like a trophy of ruthlessness. But Sun Tzu's most radical idea, the one buried in the text that almost nobody talks about, is this: the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, not to fight better, not to fight smarter, to make fighting unnecessary. And once you understand how that actually works, not as a military abstraction, but as a philosophy of how to move through a career, a relationship, a life, you will see that every unnecessary battle you have ever fought, you fought because no one taught you this. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below. What is one battle you're currently fighting that you suspect you don't actually need to win by force? I read every single one. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. The man who kept losing battles, he kept winning. The story I'm about to tell you happened to a woman named Claire, 38 years old, senior manager at a mid-sized company. Brilliant, relentless. By every conventional measure, a fighter, and a good one. For 6 years, she had been winning. She won arguments in meetings by being better prepared than anyone else. She won performance reviews by working longer hours than her peers. She won budget disputes by building tighter cases than her opponents. She was, in every room she entered, the hardest working, most prepared, most capable person present. She was also exhausted, quietly resented, passed over for the director role twice, and completely unable to understand why. She had won every battle, but somehow she kept losing the war. The promotion went to a man named David. David, who was, she would be the first to admit, less technically brilliant than her. David, who didn't have her work ethic or her preparation. David, who seemed to float through the organization, generating goodwill the way some people generate heat, effortlessly, continuously, simply by existing in a room. When she asked her mentor what she was missing, he said something she wasn't ready to hear. You've been fighting everyone, Claire, and everyone knows it. When people see you coming, they brace. When they see David coming, they relax. And companies promote the person people relax around. She went home. She didn't sleep. She started reading. She found Sun Tzu. Chapter 2. The Principle of Sheng. The Supreme Victory. Sun Tzu opens the strategic core of the art of war with a hierarchy. 100 victories in 100 battles is not the supreme excellence. Supreme excellence is breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. This single idea took 2,500 years to arrive at Claire's desk, and when it did, it cracked something open. She had been operating on a fundamental misunderstanding about how power works. She believed that power was demonstrated through winning, that to be respected, you had to be visibly right. That to advance, you had to defeat the people standing in your way. That every meeting was a battlefield, and every battlefield required a victor. But Sun Tzu understood something about fighting that most people discover only through damage. Every fight costs you something, even the ones you win. When you defeat someone publicly, they remember it. When you win an argument by force, the other person accepts your logic, but rejects your authority. When you overpower resistance, you eliminate the battle, but create the war. The superior strategist does not ask, "How do I win this fight?" The superior strategist asks, "How do I make this fight unnecessary?" A professor of organizational behavior, who has been studying workplace power dynamics for 19 years, puts it this way: the employees who advance fastest are not the ones who win the most conflicts. They are the ones who generate the fewest, not through avoidance, through positioning. They create conditions where opposing them becomes unnecessary or undesirable to their opponents before the conflict begins. Claire read this and felt the shape of her error for the first time. She had been so focused on winning that she had never once asked whether winning was the move. Chapter 3. The Principle of Shi. Position before action. Sun Tzu was not a pacifist. He understood that conflict is real, that enemies exist, that power must be built and sometimes exercised. He was not advising weakness. He was advising something harder than aggression. He who is skilled in warfare positions himself where he cannot be defeated and does not miss the moment to defeat his enemy. The word Sun Tzu uses is Shi. It means position, potential, the latent force of strategic advantage. A rock at the top of a hill has Shi. It does not need to exert force. Its position creates force. When it moves, its power comes not from effort, but from where it has been placed. Most people spend their careers exerting force. They push in meetings. They push in negotiations. They push for recognition, push for advancement, push for credit. They are boulders rolling uphill through raw effort, grinding against friction every inch of the way. The person with Shi is a boulder at the top of the hill. When they speak, people listen, not because they pushed, but because they positioned. Not because they demanded respect, but because they built, quietly and continuously, the conditions under which respect became the natural response. Claire began to audit herself. She had been spending her energy on force, on being right, on winning the argument in the room. But she had almost no Shi. She had no positioning. She had not spent her 6 years building the quiet architecture of alliances, of trust, of being the person others wanted to succeed. Sun Tzu writes, "The victorious warrior wins first and then goes to war. The defeated warrior goes to war first and then seeks to win." She had been going to war and then trying to win. The directive was different. Build the win before the battle begins. Chapter 4. The Principle of Wu Wei. Acting through non-action. 3 months into her study of Sun Tzu, Claire confronted the most counterintuitive idea in the text. Not just Sun Tzu, the entire philosophical tradition he inherited from. Wu Wei, translated as non-action, or more precisely, action that does not force. The river does not force the stone. It finds the stone's edge, its seam, the place where the stone is already willing to yield, and it moves there, continuously, without violence. Over decades, it moves mountains, not through power, through patience and direction. Claire had been the opposite of a river. She had been a hammer, and when you carry a hammer, everything looks like resistance to be broken. She began to watch the people in her organization who moved like water. They did not announce their positions and defend them. They asked questions until other people arrived at the positions themselves, and then supported those people in owning them. They did not fight for credit. They gave credit away so aggressively that people began crediting them for the giving. They did not oppose resistance directly. When they encountered opposition, they redirected it, asked what the concern was underneath it, found the legitimate fear inside the position, and addressed that instead of the position. They never seemed to lose because they never seemed to be fighting. A negotiation researcher at Columbia who has been studying conflict resolution for 14 years found this. In high-stakes negotiations, the parties who achieve the best long-term outcomes are almost never the most aggressive. They are the most curious. They enter negotiation asking what the other party actually needs, not what they're asking for. When you solve what someone needs instead of defeating what they want, they don't feel beaten. They feel helped. And they remember that. Claire realized she had spent 6 years defeating what people wanted. No one felt helped. They felt managed. Chapter 5. The Principle of GGGB. Know yourself and know your enemy. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. This is the most quoted passage in The Art of War. It is also the most misapplied. People read it as intelligence gathering. Know your competitor. Research your opponent. Understand the market. But Sun Tzu's deepest insight in this passage is the reflexive half. Know yourself. And most people, most ambitious, driven, capable people, are almost completely blind to themselves. Claire thought she knew herself. She knew her skills. She knew her work ethic. She knew her track record. She did not know how she appeared in a room. She did not know that when she was right, her face announced it before she opened her mouth. She did not know that she listened to respond, not to understand, and that everyone in every meeting could feel it. She did not know that her preparation, so impressive on paper, read in person as a refusal to be surprised, and that a person who can't be surprised cannot be collaborated with. She knew her weapon, but not her wound. Sun Tzu is precise about this asymmetry. The leader who doesn't know themselves will win battles through competence and lose wars through blind spots. And the blind spot is always the thing they're most confident is a strength. A behavioral psychologist who has been studying high-performer derailment for 18 years found that the most common cause of career stagnation in high-achieving individuals is not a skill gap. It is a perception gap. The person believes they are being experienced one way. They are being experienced a completely different way. And because they are competent enough to succeed without addressing this gap for years, they never discover it until it costs them something significant. Claire found hers, and it explained 6 years in a single afternoon. Chapter 6. The Principle of Beyond. Adaptation, Sun Tzu writes, water shapes its course according to the nature of the ground over which it flows. The soldier works out his victory in relation to the foe he is facing. Therefore, just as water retains no constant shape. In warfare, there are no constant conditions. The most dangerous person is not the strongest. It is the most adaptable. Claire had been the same in every room. The same directness, the same preparation, the same energy. Whether she was talking to the CEO or an intern, presenting to a board, or having a hallway conversation, she was identical, and she had mistaken this consistency for integrity. But Sun Tzu understood that rigidity is not strength. The tree that does not bend breaks. The warrior with only one move is defeated by anyone who has seen that move once. Adaptability is not inauthenticity. It is intelligence. It is reading the terrain before you move across it. Understanding what this room needs, what this person fears, what this moment calls for, and being capable of providing that instead of what you were going to provide anyway. Claire began to change her approach, not her values, her approach. With resistant stakeholders, she stopped pushing and started listening until the resistance had nothing to push against. With insecure peers, she stopped competing and started crediting. With her own team, she stopped demonstrating competence and started building theirs. The organization began to experience her differently. 6 months later, she got the director role, not because she had become less capable, because she had become impossible to oppose. Chapter 7. The Truth About the Battles. Your fighting here is what Claire learned that most people never do. You are not losing because your enemies are stronger. You are losing because you keep choosing the battlefield where they are strongest and you are most exposed. Sun Tzu's entire philosophy is a single, relentless question. Why fight where fighting is hardest? Why argue when you can position? Why force when you can shape? Why defeat when you can align? Why create an enemy when you can create an ally? Every unnecessary battle you have ever fought, every argument won at the cost of a relationship, every victory achieved at the cost of goodwill, every promotion pursued through competition instead of contribution, was not a failure of effort. It was a failure of strategy. You were not outworked. You were outthought, not by your opponent, by Sun Tzu's question, which you hadn't yet learned to ask. Is this fight necessary? And if it is, am I positioned to win it before it begins? Chapter 8. The Path Forward. Here is how to begin applying the art of war to your career and your life. Month 1. Audit your battles. For every conflict, negotiation, or competition currently active in your life, ask, is this fight necessary? Not whether you're right. Whether winning serves the actual goal. Many battles that feel necessary are optional, and the ones that are optional are the ones costing you the most. Month 2. Build your shy. Stop spending energy on force. Start spending it on position. Who in your organization, your industry, your life needs to trust you? Not like you. Trust you. Spend this month making one deposit per day into one trust account that you have been neglecting. Month 3. Practice Wu Wei in small conflicts. When you feel the impulse to push, pause. Ask, what does the other person actually need here? Not what they're demanding, what they need. Find that thing and address it. Watch how the resistance dissolves, not because you won, but because you solved. Month 4. Find your blind spot. Ask 3 people who know you well in professional settings to answer one question honestly. What do people experience when they're in conflict with me? Listen without defending. The answer is the beginning of your real self-knowledge. Month 5 and 6. Become water. Take the path of least resistance, not out of weakness, but out of intelligence. Find the seam in every obstacle. Find the direction things are already moving and move there. Stop fighting gravity, use it. After 6 months of this, you will not be the same person who read the first line of this script. Not because your circumstances will have transformed, because you will have become someone who no longer needs to fight to advance. And the person who no longer needs to fight is the person no one can stop. Chapter 9. The Supreme Excellence. Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War for generals. But generals are just people who have to move through resistance, build power without destroying what they need, and achieve goals in environments full of people with competing interests. That is your life. Every career is a campaign. Every relationship is a negotiation. Every goal you have ever had has stood between you and the resistance of circumstances, other people, and your own unconsidered patterns. You have been fighting because fighting is what you were taught. Push harder, work longer, be more aggressive, demand what you deserve. Sun Tzu watched armies destroyed by this advice for decades and wrote 13 chapters about why it keeps failing. The supreme excellence is not winning every fight. It is building a life in which you are so well positioned, so genuinely useful, so aligned with where things are moving, that opposing you becomes unnecessary. Not because you are powerful, because you are right. Not because you are feared, because you are needed. The warrior who wins without fighting is not passive. He is so completely prepared, so perfectly positioned, so thoroughly understood as someone worth having on your side, that by the time battle is possible, it is already unnecessary. This is the art, not the art of war, the art of making war obsolete. If this changed the way you see the conflicts in your own life, subscribe, activate the bell, and tell me in the comments. What is one fight you are going to stop forcing this week and try to dissolve instead? The supreme victory begins not with a weapon. It begins with a question. Does this fight even need to happen? The path of the supreme strategist begins now